Hey everybody, welcome back to the Year I Made It podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today's episode is going to be a Mental Health Monday episode. Happy Monday. And this Mental Health Monday episode is going to be talking about anxiety. And it's so funny, like I don't know if you're watching this view of anxiety, if this is how yours works, but this is how mine works. So I was thinking about recording this and I had anxiety about the fact that I was going to have anxiety about talking about my anxiety. So things are going really well. If you can't relate to that, you probably don't have anxiety. But, or you're not a people pleaser, you don't care what people think, or maybe just a combination of all of them, I don't know. You're doing really well though, so. So I wanted to talk to you guys about anxiety, what anxiety is, kind of how it's manifested for me, how I've been able to treat it over the years, and just some tips and tricks. So Mental Health Monday is really just a little segment that I want to do every week just to bring awareness to destigmatizing mental health, and just to be able to be open and honest about mental health challenges, things that we've all been through, things maybe the people around us have been through, talk a little bit about kind of what they are, and then really just kind of share my experiences with them. All right, so I want to start by talking about what is anxiety. So anxiety is basically just like a persistent fear, a persistent worry, a persistent just kind of feeling that something wrong is going to happen. However, everybody has this because everybody has anxiety to an extent, but actually having like a generalized anxiety disorder or something like that is actually going to be classified by that this like persistent worry, fear, whatever it is, it actually causes you to not be able to have a normal life. So in some way it kind of interferes with your normal life, your normal day-to-day, your thought process, whatever it may be. And so a lot of people, I think, wonder, like, what does anxiety look like? What is it? How do I know if I have it? This is not at all, like, for me to tell you, like, oh, if you have these things, you have anxiety. You probably do, but, like, this is just personally what it is for me. And so anxiety for me, I think a lot of times it's going to be, like, your heart racing, you feel nervous, you feel, like, maybe, like, sweaty, clammy, you maybe feel, like, sick, nauseous. So for me, one of the ways I actually found out that I had really bad untreated anxiety is when I was probably in my early 20s. I thought I had a really bad IBS. And so literally I would eat and I would immediately throw up. I would drink, I would immediately throw up. And I went to all these doctors. They thought I might have like Crohn's disease, IBS, like gave me all these medicines, none of them worked. And then finally they, through enough kind of just different questions and doctors and different things, discovered that I just had really bad untreated anxiety. And the way anxiety works is whatever it is that triggers anxiety in your mind is what is connected to like the feelings in your stomach that make you feel like you're gonna throw up, that make you feel nauseous, that make you actually throw up if you're like kind of that badly down the spiral. So I was kind of like, yeah, whatever, like, I don't have anxiety. I'm not one of those people, you know, and going on anxiety medication. It turns out I do. And the anxiety medicine pretty much immediately made it go away. So I was like, oh, they were right. I have anxiety. Noted. So I think another way that you, could kind of see or feel anxiety is like having some sort of habit. So mine is nail biting. Like I bite my nails. And then, like, right now my nails are nubbed, so then, like, I pick up my finger skin around them, which is even grosser. I'm trying to stop, so if you have any tips to how to stop do that, please leave them in the comments, because I've been trying for years. But also, like, if you're like, oh, put hot sauce on them, like, fuck no, I'm not doing that. A reasonable scenario to stop quitting biting my nails, not setting them on fire or putting hot sauce on them. So I think another way that anxiety kind of manifests is, for me personally, through nightmares. Like I noticed that I have recurring nightmares about things that make me anxious. Another way anxiety manifests is through fear. So like if you have like a situation, maybe you're like kind of like afraid to go into, a lot of times it's interpersonal. A lot of times it involves conflict. A lot of times that can be anxiety. Like if you feel like kind of sick before you go to a meeting, like that is anxiety more than likely. And so this manifests for me in a lot of ways. So I have been doing human resources for probably about 8 years now. And so I have had some fabulous days in HR and I've had some batshit crazy days in HR. I was actually telling like some of the people that I work with the other day, like my worst term story, which is when I let this guy go and he like took off the pieces of his chef's uniform and like threw them at me. So it's always a wild day in HR. But one thing that I realized, like within my job, is that sometimes I have like a fear or an anxiety going into different situations, conversations. I've been in a lot of like kind of M&A work, so sometimes I go in and I'm like, "Hi, we're buying your company. Please don't quit." Like there's just kind of a lot of pieces to that. And so one thing that I realized is that's the way anxiety manifests for me, is like thinking of all the worst case scenarios when it comes to work things. And I'm like, oh my god, what if this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens? And in my role, I kind of do full cycle HR and recruiting, so I know that if something happens on the HR side, it impacts the recruiting side, and vice versa. And then all of them are my responsibility. So it's kind of like, oh, okay. So kind of just that is something that I think that I definitely see a lot of anxiety within my work. So significantly less now that I, one, I have more experience, and two, I'm on the right mental health medications. But one thing that I've learned kind of with that is I have like this saying that I always tell myself, which is like, the fear might not go away, but like I still have to do it, so do it afraid. And that's like basically just like me giving myself tough love sometimes. Is like sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do whatever, say whatever, have whatever conversation, and then I'll just remind myself, like, you have to do this. And there might not be a time where you're not afraid or you're not anxious or not worried about having this conversation, but you still need to have it, so chop, sooner the better. And that's just kind of the mindset I've now developed. So that is just a little bit about kind of how anxiety kind of shows up for me and what it looks like for me, and some of the things that I've identified are like, oh, I know if I'm having this, then this means I'm probably very anxious. Let's pause. What am I anxious about? Is it a legitimate thing that I should be anxious about it? Or is my mind just like coming up with worst case scenarios that are definitely never going to happen? Most of the time it's the latter. So on to kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is how I manage my anxiety. So I have done everything from not managing my anxiety at all to right now I have pretty well managed anxiety. And so some of the things that I do is I of course have like daily habits that I do. So whenever I wake up in the morning, I do a devotional, I pray, I read, I do my little like Duolingo app, like I do a bunch of positive things in the morning, like before I even like get ready or anything. And so those are obviously just kind of like daily things that I do for myself, but obviously a lot of people with anxiety need more than that. So I also go to a therapist, and I also go to a psychiatrist. So I go to a therapist probably like once or twice a month, depending. I actually go to a cognitive behavioral therapist. So this is actually, cognitive behavioral therapy is really good for people who have anxiety, because it actually helps you to change your mindset and to change the way your mind thinks about things, processes things, and to be able to identify your anxiety, whether or not you need to worry about it, and then if so, how you're able to problem solve through it rather than like respond to it and let it run your life. It's a lot more than that, but that's just kind of one of the ways that it's helped me. So I do that, and then I also take medication. So I have been taking Lexapro. I'm moving to taking Pristiq. Pristiq is actually supposed to help with social anxiety as well, which I'm super excited about, because since I've stopped drinking, I have really bad social anxiety. I'll touch on that in a sec. And I also have some other meds I take. So I have this Buspirone tab that I take that is basically like a non-addictive Xanax that I take a couple times a day. It doesn't feel like a Xanax. It just feels like, okay, things are good, which is nice. And then I also take Trazodone, which is a sleeping pill that I take at night because I have nightmares. And so that makes them better most of the time. So my next thing I was going to go into is like, how does anxiety manifest? And this kind of goes into like kind of one of the things I mentioned of like social anxiety. So for me, I've had a lot of social anxiety recently because I stopped drinking. And so for me, drinking was always like a little like, ooh, I could go out and I could have like at least 2 drinks and like, bam, I'll talk to anybody about anything. We'll have a great time. We'll have something to connect about, and like things are good. Now I'm like, and then I also like give myself anxiety about conversations I don't need to have anxiety about. Like I'll go somewhere where there's alcohol, and then like in my mind I'll like worry about like if somebody like says something weird about the fact that I don't drink, or just like things that like won't happen, don't matter, aren't relevant, but like whatever. So now I have a little bit of social anxiety. So this new medicine that I'm supposed to be like in the process of switching from Lexapro to Pristiq, and so within that switch, Pristiq is supposed to also help with social anxiety. So I'll let you guys know how that goes. But one example for me of how I realized that I had like pretty bad social anxiety is I had to go to the Bahamas for a work trip probably like close to a year ago, like last, like maybe May or March or something like that. Fabulous time, totally, like, this is like very much like, this sounds like a very, unnecessary problem to have, but I think it's like a good example of how anxiety is always with you no matter where you are. So I had to go on this work trip to the Bahamas for this conference. So I was in the Bahamas for like 5 or 6 days. I'm hype about it going in. I love to travel. I love the beach. I love all of it. Like me, I'm so excited, right? So I realized it's the first time I've ever gone or done anything like this alone. I was in the process of getting divorced whenever I went, so everybody's there with their like husband or wife of 30 years. I'm there by myself. A lot of the day is literally like meetings and like a ton of free time that I spend by myself. And at the time, I hadn't really learned how to spend time by myself and have a good time. So I was so anxious the whole time that I was gone. Like, I did not have a good time. I did not want to talk to strangers because I was having social anxiety. I didn't think they would like me. So then I would drink a lot, and then I would get anxious that I drank too much and I said something dumb. Like, it was just a bad spiral. And so I think like I like have like this very vivid like memory of being on a catamaran. And so one of our things that they had at this benefits conference, which again, so lucky, was there's like an afternoon like kind of like boozy catamaran, like get to know all the consultants sort of like meet and greet type thing on a catamaran in the Bahamas where we're going snorkeling. Again, like my dream. Like I love every part of it. Like at the time I loved the alcohol, I loved the boat, I loved the snorkeling, I loved to see the ocean, but I had such bad anxiety because I didn't know anybody on this boat. I didn't want to talk to them, I didn't want to make new friends. I had such bad social anxiety. It was also like in the middle of the day, so like, you know, I drank. Should I drink that much in the middle of the day? No, but did I? Yeah. So I vividly remember like being on this catamaran, like having so much social anxiety, like hoping nobody talked to me, but like also hoping somebody did at the same time. And just being like, wow, I'm literally in like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in the world, and I'm still so anxious. Like, this is so fucked up. Like, you literally can't escape anxiety no matter where it goes. And so I think for a long time I realized that part of my love for travel was that, like, in my mind, I thought I would get to escape these worries of everyday life or escape my everyday life by traveling. And I didn't. I just got to go fabulous places and have more anxiety there about the things that I left behind. So now I'm working on actually going through the process of kind of healing, working through those things, not being worried and anxious all the time, and actually just kind of feeling my dumb feelings so they don't manifest on a catamaran in the Bahamas, so I can enjoy myself. So that's what I'm up to. It's my journey. So I want to talk about some of the things that cause people to have anxiety, and some of the things that sometimes you may just get it, and like you may be like me and you're like, I'm not going to be a mental illness person, I'm not going to have it, I am not going to allow it, I am better than it, I'm stronger than it. Like, it's cool, just accept it. It's 2023, we're all open about our mental illness now. So a big cause of mental illness is hereditary. So if you have people in your family that have anxiety or depression, or even more specific things like bipolar, borderline personality, schizophrenia, different things like that, like those things are hereditary, which means unfortunately you may get them because people before you came and had them. Same thing as heart attacks and varicose veins. Like, mental health is the same. So I personally am one of those people. I definitely have mental health on kind of all sides of my family. And so I have anxiety. I've had some depression. I would say right now my depression's like pretty good. I would say right now I'm really more struggling kind of with the anxiety, and then with nightmares, oddly. So that's one kind of cause that you can get from anxiety. And then I think another is just kind of today's society can cause people to be very anxious. I think today's society can cause a lot of kind of limiting beliefs, like self-limiting beliefs, like I'm not good enough, this person has it better. Social media makes it seem like everybody has this grand whatever, and you know, things that people don't really have, and it makes people, you know, discouraged, and it makes people kind of have like imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I couldn't have that, whatever, and then that kind of causes more of a spiral of anxiety. And let me stop that right there, because you are good enough, you can have it, and anything that anybody else has, like, you can work hard and have it too. So that's just a little bit about kind of some of the things that cause anxiety, and then kind of some of the ways that it can almost kind of like stop you in your tracks or stop you in your life, but you shouldn't let it. A good example is me recording this. So I like didn't want to record this because, you know, I have anxiety about talking about my anxiety, which, you know, funny. But here I am recording, telling you guys about my anxiety. Hopefully I'll post it. Okay, so another thing that I have realized that manifests in me because I have anxiety is codependency through like trying to like control people and situations. Now I'm very aware that I do this and I'm trying really, really hard not to do it. But like basically anxiety is like something in your brain that's like, hey, this situation's not safe. And a lot of times it is, and your brain's just making you think that it's